Hello, everybody. Welcome to this next audio recording of Comix-Watch. I am Professor Nick, and joining me is Morph Extraordinaire, Jared from Comics League.
Previously on Comix-Watch.
Oh my god. Okay, say that again.
Previously on Comix-Watch.
Hey, I'm totally gonna echo that and
Yeah,
do all
go
that
ahead.
stuff.
I don't care.
Yes, because we're audio now. We can make it out. So we're here to talk about X-Men and politicization. Now, this is going to be probably a little more of a spicier episode. We're not going to get full conspiracy. Anyway. So with X-Men 97 coming out and it being exactly what we feared it would be.
Not quite. Hang on. Here's the thing. And Neon brought up a very interesting point. He said that the showrunner of X-Men 97 came out repeatedly against the people changing The Witcher, and he made sure that he only hired people that were fans of the cartoon.
Then he changed more.
Did he really change more, or did he really just add something? Mystique
is not non-binary. She is a woman.
She's a woman. It's like, it doesn't have to be that way. It can. I get where they're coming from with that, but it doesn't.
The only thing she decides is if she wants to be Rebecca Romaine or Jennifer Lawrence.
Either one is fine with me. It's a little bit of a misconception with the X-Men that they've always been intended to be an allegory for like racism and bigotry, because for one thing, Stan Lee has gone back and forth on this many times. It depends on what's fashionable.
He said he created mutant as kind of like a cheat code. Oh, let's just call them mutant.
It's in their DNA. That's it. I'm done.
And in the context of the 60s, yeah, that worked. Like if you go back and look at the original Stan Lee Jack Kirby run,
not political at all. It was classic superhero stuff.
It's very much like superheroes at their finest. Marvel girls fainting all the time. Professor X has an unhealthy obsession with a teenage girl. It's almost like Bruce Timm. There you
go. It's almost like Spent by Bruce Timm. There we go. We got it.
I was trying to head you off. I knew.
You will never head me off of my Bruce Timm joke, sir.
I knew what you were going to say.
You will never head me off on that, dude.
I had to head you off the path.
It wasn't really until the Claremont era that I think that they really went the political bend. In a good way, though. Claremont was very talented at doing this.
Yeah, I mean, just look at them. Really tried to have a diverse and also international. Obviously, Wolverine was Canadian. Scott was American. Colossus was Russian. Sunfire was Japanese.
Storm was African.
You had him. I mean, Storm itself is a big thing.
It's interesting. If you watch that Chris Claremont documentary, it's on YouTube, that I would highly recommend people watch. It's so good. He brought up about how when he was coming up with a character, he goes, is there a reason why this character can't be a woman? That's why a ton of his like most famous characters are women, like Rogue and Storm. Well, he didn't create Storm. He just really fleshed out her character. Because remember, X-Men, Giant says X-Men 1 is written by Len Wein. It's just what happened is Wein created the new team. Then Claremont went in and revamped the X-Men.
They also got a thing is, we talk about Storm became leader of the X-Men in the 80s, and she earned it.
100% she earned it. She was one of the coolest and best well-developed female comic book characters I think Marvel has ever produced. One of them. There are a few others. Like, let's wait. She's no Carol Danvers.
In terms of great female character, Shadowcat,
which was a big thing in his run.
Then also X-Men adjacent comics had other milestones, like the first openly gay character in comics, Northstar, was an Alpha Flight. So to say that X-Men is political is not a entirely untrue statement, but to say it has always been political is a bit of an exaggeration in my opinion.
Exactly, and that's where a lot of people I think are confusing. Here's the problem. People don't know that the X-Men existed before Chris Claremont. He's the writer that defined them, but they existed before him. In fact, they were a canceled book that no one had any faith in until they revamped it with Giant Size and then put Claremont on it.
You have that a lot with like different comics, like and kind of revamped it, you know. And there's also, you go to the DC side, it wasn't until Denny O'Neil and the Neil Adams run of Batman that really defined the character.
Here's the difference with what Claremont did compared to what modern writers did. Claremont did it well. He did it where, because here's what Claremont did, and this is what I've always advocated for. Yes, he turned into an allegory for being an other, a person. But what he did is he made it so it's any type of othering, no matter what you were. Hell, if you were a Republican and a Democrat, essentially what he did is he created a team for everyone. To be clear, that includes the LGBTQ community.
I think you mentioned that because that's a perfect segue into kind of the next. Over time, the X-Men kind of evolved, really queerness and homosexuality, and it really started to take off in like the 2000s. I really enjoyed how in X2 they had that scene of which was essentially a coming out scene.
So, when did you first know you were A mutant?
scene.
It was 100% that.
And then in First Class, they went full bore.
Hank? Didn't ask, so I didn't tell.
Sure, are you familiar with the don't ask, don't tell policy?
Yes, I am.
They literally said, you didn't ask, I didn't. It's kind of like 40 years early. It's a bit on the nose.
First Class, they did to Beast what Brian Michael Bendis did to Iceman.
He outed him as a mutant.
Well, yeah, but in terms of the analogy, you know what I'm going for here.
But the thing is, even though it's on the nose, it's still subtle enough that they're not beating over the head with it.
Because again, it applies, they made it general enough that it applies to any type of being othered in any way.
I mean, to be fair, like the scene in X2 is very much
very much in the LGBT community, like an analogy for that, but
and making it and literally saying don't ask, don't. Basically, Professor X outed B. I like those scenes because they're subtle and they do what sci-fi does best is it helps you understand concepts through an abstract lens. You know?
It's like, you know, I'll give you a perfect example because I was homeschooled. You know what was a great aid to my homeschooling? You're gonna love this video game, because here's why. Growing up, I had a fantastic vocabulary. I still do. Mom would tell me, how did you learn these words? Gaming. Like they would use like advanced words in Call of Duty, comic books, novel. I was reading Halo novels when I was 10. So you're using all of this stuff to like aid your education and enrich the person. And that's the thing. That's partly why I have a lot of respect for the LGBT community, because I'm a huge fan of the X-Men. In fact, I've long said they're one of the Marvel books that I have always loved, because my reasoning for liking DC more than Marvel is because I like those gods amongst men. The X-Men are the closest to that Marvel has.
Daredevil as well.
Well, what I mean is that, like, the characters that are so powerful.
And the thing you got to realize is X-Men is the only title in which you can explore a lot of those homosexual queer themes and do it right.
And the thing about X-Men that I love about it, the cartoon played on this too, is that Professor X's dream is that everyone can coexist and be who they are without fear of persecution. He means everyone.
I'm going to go back to the Singer movies. One thing I really like about the Professor X Magneto dynamic is they were very much going for a Malcolm X, Martin Luther King dynamic. Professor X was Martin Luther King, Magneto was Malcolm X. Like, you knew that that was their intention, right?
Speaking of Magneto, Professor X, you know what's the one moment that always brings me to tears?
What?
It's in X-Men Days of Future Past when it looks like they're all gonna die, and Magneto goes to Charles and he goes, so many years wasted to have a few of those years back. It's like he's saying, we wasted so much time fighting. Imagine what we could have done if we were together from the beginning.
There's kind of a similar moment in X-Men 3 The Last Stand where Pyro is kind of making fun of Charles Xavier.
Yeah.
And Magneto's like,
Charles has done more for mutants.
that movie is crap, but it kind of has
It has great
here
moments.
and there.
And that's the thing. That's what Professor X, even if they disagreed on how to get to that dream of mutants not having to hide, they still were going for this relatively the same. Granted, Magneto wanted to subjugate mankind. They were still trying to protect mutant kind. They both acknowledge that.
By the way, as like a tangent, how crazy of it, what post-credit scene for the Wolverine, you see Magneto, and then Professor X shows up, and they're teaming up.
And by the way, it was kind of funny. When I first saw that, I didn't see that post-credit scene of X3. So I'm like, how are you still alive? You disintegrated.
That was a post-credit scene,
It was of 3. I think Lad's the one that showed me that when we did an analysis of the X-Men movie. It might have been you. It was on an episode that I first learned about that.
Well, the problem is when they did X-Men 3, people weren't used to post-credit scene. I think that film came out pre-Iron Man.
Yeah, it did. That's why. Plus, everyone was trying to get out of the movie as fast as possible because it was a crap movie. So like, I'm not waiting for any more. And again, that is why that dynamic, Professor X and Charles Xavier, is always one of the most fascinating dynamics in all mutants. It was kind of cool. They played on this in the Hickman era in House of X Powers of 10 when they're teaming up. Start of Krakoa will declare themselves as an island. The opening storyline, House of X Powers of X, was good. When Charles is about to reach into everyone's mind and announce the mutant nation of Krakoa, Magneto goes to him and says, everything that's happened in the past between us, that's in the past. We're starting fresh. I'm here. I stand with you. So I'm like, okay, that was really cool. I like that.
I think the problem that we have here, and like I said, this is my opinion, X-Men can be political. X-Men, because of its very nature, makes it easier to explore certain things that are harder in certain books, like racism and queerness and whatnot. For a lot of modern audience, that's all in it. Because I feel like up until literally 2 weeks ago, X-Men was all about queerness, and now all of a sudden it's about racism again. It's just kind of weird how it flipped flip-flop like that, but that's just whatever.
And the problem with it is that modern creatives take that only about this and do what Claremont didn't do and make it too explicitly about that. And you can do like one-off stories that explores that, like X2. But the problem is when you only write that, you alienate the audience that comes to them for classic superhero stuff, or in a way, you other the people that come to X-Men because they feel othered.
And the thing that people don't realize is the appeal of X-Men is there was something for everybody. Because it was an ensemble, they had this wide variety of characters. You could latch on to different characters, like Crawler, Colossus, Shadowcat, different age groups, different demographic. Okay, who is your favorite X-Men character?
Okay, that's a tough I have 3. Emma Frost, Cyclops, and Wolverine. Emma Frost, because she's gone through quite the redemption arc to be one of the leaders of the X-Men. In fact, right now she's married to Tony Stark, believe it or not, because they're kind of tying him into the X-Men. And it's actually a really cool story so far. Cyclops, because Marvel editorial has really brought him through the ringer, trying to turn him into like a villain. But the thing about Cyclops is that he's one of those complicated characters that has the weight of the world on his shoulders. Because remember, it's like he's the leader of the X-Men when Charles is not there. For the longest time since House of M, Charles has not been there for a while, up until like a certain point in X-Men lore. Plus, his girlfriend dies every 30 seconds. That's one of the reasons why I prefer Scott and Emma Frost, because
Emma doesn't die every 30 seconds.
Well, they actually explore this in a really cool story where Emma's the only person that Cyclops can actually not have to wear the glasses, because when she turns into his to diamond form, the blast does not hurt her. It's really cool. And Wolverine, because it's Wolverine, and because I like the idea of the immortal dude that can't die. I've always loved immortal stories, probably because I like Berserker from Keanu Reeves. Plus, he's the best at what he does, and what he does ain't nice. You gotta love that.
It's kind of the law. So for me, Nightcrawler is definitely one of my favorites. I love his resilience of his character. He's a blue demon, but he's still a Catholic. I love the religious aspect of his character.
Speaking of representation, I'm a Catholic myself, and I appreciate that representation.
And yet you never talk about Daredevil. Literally the Catholic.
No, I love Daredevil too. It's just we're talking about X-Men right now.
And I love that. I also love how he's got like he's kind of got like that Yorsuke Sulu energy from Star Trek, that swashbuckling kind of like devil may care attitude.
Yeah, I love
really messed up life. The other X-Men character I love is Colossus, just because he's got a heart of gold. I feel like Deadpool nailed his character.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was so good.
And my favorite moment was like, I will fight dirty.
Yeah. Oh, I love where he punches him in the nuts, and then the Deadpool goes, "Oh, your poor wife." That was so good. And I love where Deadpool does the entire speech about you have to wake up and be a hero, and they just shoot Francis. It's like, what the hell? He goes, it was going on forever. And I love that. It's time to fight dirty. Big CGI fight coming up.
For my number 3, it's gonna be Overlap Wolverine. You know,
you can't not like. I feel like that's obligatory. It's got to be in every X-Men fan's top 5.
Definitely Nightcrawler and Colossus are my stand-up.
Those are great. I love those. And that's the thing. Again, that's thanks to Chris Claremont that we have that these characters were so distinct enough that no one was a side character. No one. In a lot of team books, I've noticed there's always a few characters they just throw in there for fun, and then no one really takes them seriously. Because like if you read the Justice League, you're here for like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman, and so on and so forth. Where with the X-Men, particularly when Claremont was writing it, every character was important.
Especially the baby powder that helped Psylocke get into her outfit. I don't know how Olivia Munn squeezed into that thing. I love that they had a 100% comics accurate costume for Psylocke.
Yeah, by the way, a few years ago, I met Chris Claremont and I asked, what do you think is the most true to page representation of your work of the X-Men movies? He said Days of Future Past. And he said something very interesting about the Dark Phoenix movie. Shall I share?
Go ahead.
Do you know why that third act is random as hell and is disjointed?
Because it was reshoot?
Yes, because they were originally going to do the Phoenix form and all that stuff. And Binary, it's just what happened is the Captain Marvel movie was coming out.
I mean, not just that, but the Skrulls. But did you notice in the train sequence, it was the Mutant Control Unit or the MCU?
It's like the X-Men people were like, just so you know where you're gonna see us next.
Well, no, it was because by the time they were doing the reshoot, Fox was already bought by Disney. Okay. Simon Kinberg was like, the X-Men were literally being captured by the MCU.
How cool is it that Deadpool 3 is the first Marvel movie that has it's the first X-Men movie that has the Marvel Studios thing in front of it now?
Oh my god.
That's gonna be so much fun.
Wrap up. And if you made it this far, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That always helps.
Particularly like.
And if you'd like to so far, do you think X-Men is political? Do you think it
Has
shouldn't
always
be?
been political.
Also,
always is important.
Who's your favorite X-Men? Please let
Yeah.
us know down in the
Go
comments
ahead.
below. So Jared, what do you think is the path forward with X? Obviously, you can't let the genie out of the bottle. X-Men is always going to have a twinge of the political, the twinge of the queer, the twinge of the racism stuff. What do you think is the path going forward?
Well, first off, it's basically confirmed that they're rebooting the X-Men. What I have heard what they're going to do is they're going to go back in time and kill Moira before she can start the whole Krakoa thing.
Oh my god.
Which it's time travel in X-Men, so that works. Now, in terms of how I would handle it, you have to lean into it in some way because guess what? That's what your brand is in a way. What you could do, have another X-Men team of characters that's basically explores that part of being a mutant and have the traditional X-Men superhero stories. That way both sides get what they want. Because they kind of did that actually in the Krakoa age where they had X-Force was more of the Black Ops superhero stuff. X-Men was just Jonathan Hickman trying to prove how smart he was. There was this really stupid book, I forget what it was, where one of the lines was, I think it was like Boom Boom shows up and goes, it's wine o'clock, that word for women, trying to be...
That sounds like a modern story.
Yeah, it was a modern story. I'll tell you, I'll do it here.
It's fine.
Okay, but the point is also get competent creatives that can do the political, but do it in a way where you don't piss off half your audience.
Also, if
guess
you
what?
hire John
I might
Hickman,
do-
let him complete his run.
Yeah, because that was the other problem with, because I got news for you. You know when it got away from Hickman? As soon as he got them on the island. That's it.
See, that's a problem they had. Hickman started his run, and X-Men was having buzz for the first time in over a decade. People were
He
talking about
revitalized the book. He revitalized that book.
like people were actually talking about X-Men for the first time in a decade.
And then they just, as Marvel is wont to do,
Thank you everyone for tuning in. And as always, this is Nick for the Phoenix Press. And remember, I can only show you the door.
You're the one that has to walk through it.